Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. We're a crowded crew tonight. We've got several people with us. We've got Brad.
Good evening.
We've also got Dan.
Hey everyone.
And for the first time in I would say over a year, we've got Mitch.
Hey guys.
Welcome back, Mitch. It's been a while. We'll start with you. It was a disappointing result, I guess, against Wednesday. We predictably took the lead and we predictably conceded the lead, but unpredictably, we actually managed to get an equaliser. So, how did you see this one?
Yeah, well, it was nice to be on the other end of a late goal for once. But yeah, like, I don't know. I guess it's a decent point away from home, but for where we are, I don't think a point is like going to do us much good. Like considering we shouldn't be in this position in the first place. So I guess 3 points is the only thing that's going to keep me happy at the moment. But I guess like before the game, would I have taken a draw? Probably, I guess. But yeah, disappointing to have the lead and lose it.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, we pretty much dominated that first half. I think the stats at half time would say that we didn't concede a shot on target. So, really, it's a pretty frustrating one where we come out second half and they really get all over us and arguably deserved the win. And obviously, luckily, we managed to snatch a point at the end of it. But as Mitch, I guess, has said, we really need more than a point at this stage.
Yeah, probably the key word I just pulled out of your little statement there was frustration, and that seems to be like a resounding and repetitive experience for us at the moment. Yeah, like it's as Mitch said, it's good to see that we clawed back to a late goal to snatch a point, but it's really not enough, and it's the same story. Like we went up and we were dominating, and then we basically threw the game away, and then just I think Dawson managed to snatch it for us on his after he's missed the last game. But yeah, it's very frustrating, disappointing, and yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully, we'll see an upturn in fortunes. I mean, you never know. That last gasp equaliser might be just what we need to spur us on and start pushing us into some more positive results.
Yeah, Brad. I mean, we'll talk in a second about the ramifications for the managers and what's happened there. But obviously, Campbell with a great goal in the first half, and then Dawson right at the end there really saved us. But how did you see the game? How did you see the performance from the players? Because obviously in the second half they just really kind of dropped back and went into their shells.
Yeah, look, they did, and I suppose maybe I'm looking at it a bit different than I normally would. I was actually glad we frustrated another team with a last-minute goal, and I actually thought it was probably what we deserved, even though we did sit back at times and probably looked like we weren't going to add a lot of value to the game. But probably the thing that I keep looking at is if we do pick up a point away, that's job done. It's always got to be on our own soil, and that's where we're going to pick up 6 points out of 9 or something like that. So I'm sort of okay with the draw, and glad that we pissed someone else off for a change. But probably in hindsight, I still think it gets back to home form and actually winning games at home.
And Brad, I'll stay with you on this one. Obviously, the game's had a pretty negative fallout in terms of our managerial casualty with Slutsky going. Do you think he was a bit hard done by with the sacking? I mean, we've talked in previous weeks about whether or not he deserved the job, whether he deserved to stay in the job. And obviously, just recently, in the last half an hour or so, we've had Nigel Adkins appointed as manager. So what have you made of that managerial turnaround?
Look, to answer your first point, we know he was sacked. He probably, with the greatest respect to Leonid, had lost everyone's faith in the last few weeks, if not weeks ago. It's a performance-based situation, and the figures aren't there, and of course the manager calls the shots. So I do think, though, that he was on a hiding to nothing from the start. Obviously, it's been well talked about. The squad being put together so late is always going to be a problem. And although we saw a bit of honeymoon period when Phelan took over last year, that soon dissipated because you can't hide from the fact you need these guys together for a long period of time to work on a lot of things in pre-season. But maybe Leonard wasn't up to it. He certainly showed at other levels he can do it. But without sort of taking away the rest of the conversation, Adkins I don't have a real opinion on other than he's done it before at other clubs, but he's also had a lean spell at some championship clubs as well. So the only thing I can think of is if you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing for a few weeks, you've got to make a change. The key's going to be whether Adkins can utilise his contacts and open January up with what he actually wants, or whether Ehab's going to actually let him.
And Dan, yeah, as Brad said there, Slutsky obviously on a hiding to nothing for several weeks now, really. I mean, it's really. I'm thinking back and honestly until that Birmingham City game where we won 6-1, and that was probably the last positive result he's had. Arguably the Barnsley game where we won 1-0, but other than that, I feel like pretty much every game since then it's been late goal after late goal, and really the confidence has slipped away. Was this sacking basically inevitable, and what's your opinion of Adkins coming in?
Yeah, look, honestly, I think the writing's been on the wall for a little while. That like Adkins he's sat in and watched 3 or 4 games or something. I'm pretty sure he's been to a few games this season, sitting with the Allams. So, I mean, you'd have to say that Slutsky unfortunately has been a bit of a dead man walking for a little while, and then, which, as Brad said, it's a results based game, and the results unfortunately haven't been there for Slutsky or for us this season so far. And I said last week that I like Leonid, but I can't actually find a reasonable argument against the decision to let him go. Whether the decision to appoint Nigel Adkins is going to be a good one, I suppose we will see. But yeah. He has, as Brad said, he's done some good stuff at Southampton, particularly when successive promotions, I think. But he's had some shockers as well. So I hope that he does good things. But I think when you think about like Southampton, for example, like they've got one of the best youth academies in England. And obviously, when you're working on championship or below that level, you've got it on a limited budget, and you got to be able to make the most of the resources you have available. And if you've got good quality youth and you've got that system in place, then that always makes that job a little bit easier.
Yeah, Mitch, Adkins being appointed. Interestingly, after Ehab had said, I think it was when we appointed Silva, where he sort of proudly said, "Oh well, we're not going to get involved in this managerial merry-go-round, and we're not going to appoint, Tony Pulis or a Sam Allardyce to keep us up. We're going to go out and we're going to get Marco Silva. We're going to try something different." Obviously, Slutsky was a little bit different as well, but now we've kind of reverted to type by going out and getting Nigel Adkins, that British sort of manager who'll give you a bit of safety, bit of security, and be something a bit more predictable. How do you see the appointment of Adkins? Dan sort of touched on there. He did really well with Southampton. He did well before that with Scunthorpe as well. But then he kind of didn't do so well with Reading, and then I think a lot of Sheffield United supporters are saying he's basically the worst manager they've ever had. So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, for starters, with what Ehab said, I've kind of just realised that everything he says is probably not worth listening to. But yeah, on Adkins, I guess his record, I'm just looking at his win percentages right now, and they're all around 40s or 50s, which is okay considering ours this season is below 20, I'm pretty sure. I think it's 19.7%.
Yeah.
So I guess when you look at it like that, but yeah, I'm not sure if it's probably just something short term, or as 18 months. But yeah, I think he'll be able to keep us up at the very least.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. Obviously, at this stage, sadly enough, it seems that our focus is more on staying up than on going up. do you think that Adkins is the manager to keep us in the championship, which 6 months ago would have been a crazy question to ask, but do you think he's basically come in to keep us in the championship, or do you think in the next 6 months? I mean, you kind of forget that we're going to get Hernandez back in a month or so, really. Moses Odebajo might be coming back in the next month or two, and Ryan Mason might be coming back in pretty soon as well. So there's a couple of pretty decent players coming back into the side potentially. Do you think that could give us actually a bit of a boost and, dare I say it, make a run for the playoffs?
Well, that's what I've been saying to my brother when he's been hanging crap on me. That we've got three really good players on the sidelines. I'm not sure that if they come back, we'll be able to push for the playoff spots. I think we're a little bit too far off. I don't know, it's only halfway through, but it's still a big hill to climb. But I think Atkins can just keep us up, probably mid-table, even lower mid-table, just anything but going down. I will take. But yeah, I think that's what he's been brought in to do, and I think he'll do that well enough.
Yeah, Brad, just on that, do you think what role do you think Adkins has been brought into play? Is it to keep us up, or is it to sort of push us into that mid-table, upper half of the table sort of range?
Yeah, look, I think if you ask Ehab, he'd be saying that Adkins is there to try and protect the value of the squad and not getting relegated. But yeah, look, Adkins is probably the man to keep us up. I shouldn't say the man. He's the one that probably will keep us up now that he's been appointed. But the thing that interests me the most is just going back to Dan's point. He talked about the fact that Southampton had a U-Butte academy, and at that stage, although he was, I suppose, controversially sacked, in the long term it was a good appointment, and they were a very stable club in the back office, whereas it'd be interesting to see how good old Nige goes with stabbing Ehab, and what happens when Hernandez and Odebajo and Mason come on and could be even transfer bait. It'd be very, very interesting to see what sort of guarantees, if they're worth anything, Ehab's given Adkins. But I do think overall I actually think, funny enough, Leonard would have kept us up, because the amount of mistakes we were making in him, we were going to get it right. And you just can't score that many goals and get relegated, in my opinion. But Adkins could get on a little run that sees us safely entrenched in mid-table. It'd be nice to see anyway.
Well, it's interesting your point there, whether anything happens in January. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Jared Bowen in particular, and also Kamil Grzycki in terms of potential sales in January. I think whether Adkins has come in with any sorts of assurances about the squad being held together. Obviously, Slutsky was given the same sorts of assurances, and then we saw Klukas out the door on just about the last day of the window. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think that was lost in translation.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The supermarket doors being closed, I don't think quite were at that point. They were sort of opening and closing at that time, players coming in and out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Adkins can manage to do. I find it interesting because he's another sort of manager like Slutsky who's a bit more positive and cheerful and optimistic, whereas Silva and Bruce before him were a bit more cold and calculating. And I saw a pretty depressing stat, Dan, recently, that we've had more managers than away wins since Bruce left us. It's an interesting one to think about because we had Bruce in charge for about 3 years, and since then we've had a bit more of a revolving door. Do you think Adkins is sort of the answer, that we'll get a bit more stability under him, or is it more a case that the club is just going to continue to churn through managers as we inevitably sort of drop down the league rankings?
Oh, yeah. I think Adkins has been brought in. He's been brought in to steady the ship. Like, that's end of story. They've got someone they're just obviously, like, we just got to stop shipping goals. And I assume tactically that'll be the thing. We'll start trying to stop going backwards on the field. And then in terms of the broader picture, I would imagine that his role within the organization as a whole is much the same. That they're just going to try and I would like to think that if he can do his job on the field, then the stability that comes from that will allow us to hopefully keep him in a position for long enough that we're not going to continue on the on this managerial merry-go-round.
Maguire moving the ball to the right. El Mohammadi now the 1-2. This is better stuff from Hull. Can Maguire supply a cross into the middle? It's going to drop for Diame. Scrambled in. They've made up for the penalty which they've missed earlier on in this game, and Hull have distanced themselves away from Brentford before half-time.
Okay, well, we'll talk now about Brentford, who are our upcoming opponent this weekend. And it was a pretty comprehensive couple of victories that we had against them last year, courtesy of both Clucas and Robertson in the first game of last season. And then, as we just heard, Mo Diame in the returning game at the KCOM at the end of the season. It's a team that we've had a decent record against recently, and dare I say it, another B team where obviously we didn't get the result against Bristol City at the KCOM in our last try against them, but we've had a pretty decent record against B named teams so far this season. Brad, I'll start with Dan on this one. Dan, what's your take on Brentford? I mean, they've had a pretty similar season to us. Some would have expected them to have a stronger season. They've got a decent squad of players. One of those teams that's kind of going for that money ball tactic where they're plucking players from here and there. And of course, we got Moses from them a couple of seasons ago. Burnley got Andre Gray, who we were pursuing for quite a while from them as well. They've got a decent squad, but they're also sort of languishing towards the bottom of the table. Do you see it as a decent chance for Adkins to get 3 points on the board to start his managerial reign?
I that first game in charge is always interesting. Look, I think he's got a few sessions with the squad. I think I think we'll come out and we'll play a pretty simple game. Honestly, I think he'll just spend a couple of days trying to get a defensive structure, like a structure set up, and say this is what we're going to do basically, and it's not going to be too complex or anything. You know, this is the way that I want to play, and we're just going to start introducing them to that. And honestly, like at this stage, a nice simple game plan might be just what we need. I'm just looking, Brentford 6 wins, 9 draws. Nothing. Yeah, they're not going as well as they possibly could be. But they're around mid-table, probably where I would love to be at the moment. But no, I honestly, like we've said it before, and I mean I'll be the one to say it again, that the championship is a really tough competition because anyone can honestly beat anyone on any given day. And I don't know. I think the change. I think the change will do us good. I'm not sure if it'll be enough for a win, but I think we can get a nice positive draw out of it.
And then on that, Mitch, I guess, as Dan said, it's a division where anyone can beat anyone, and I guess that gives us a chance as good as anyone on a given day. Brentford at home, as good as any chance, really, to get a result for Adkins. They don't seem to be anything special, really, this season, so you'd hope that we can get a positive result.
Well, yeah, at home, you'd always hope for a positive result. But in saying that, they've only lost one in like their last 13 league games, and that was to Cardiff as well. So, yeah, their recent form's been really good.
Way to ruin rain on my parade.
I'm sorry. And Jarrod Bowen's out too, so that could prove interesting. You'd assume Grzycki will come in. But
Mitch, I'm not getting you on the podcast for another 2 years. You're just bringing me lots of bad news.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well, we lose a lot of goals with, basically all our goals with Tom being out. But Grzycki on his day is probably our best player, in my opinion, if he's on his game, which is very 50-50. But he's got a point to prove now since he's been benched lately. So I'll say we'll get a draw there.
Yeah, so just on that, I guess with Grzycki potentially coming back into the lineup if Bowen's to miss, how do you see us lining up? Because we've talked in recent podcasts about the fact that Slutsky sort of alternated between two up top and one up top. Adkins is an interesting one because there'd be some perceptions of the fact that he's English and he's traditional and boring and predictable or whatever, that he might go a bit more defensive. But of course, Southampton under him was quite attacking, and I think it was actually one of the reasons he ended up getting sacked was they were letting in so many goals. Funnily enough, quite similar to Slutsky. Do you see him going a bit more attacking and playing the two up top, especially at home, or do you see him being a bit more cautious and maybe just going Campbell up top?
I have a feeling he'll play. It's really tough. At first, I thought Dicko and Campbell up top, but looking at him, if I just want Jackson Irvine to play basically, and I can't really see him not starting Henriksen either, even though he's not been superb. I think he'll start both of those two, and then obviously Grzycki as well. So I think he'll just play Campbell up front.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as you say, with both Henriksen and Irvine as potential players to start, Torrell's also fit now as well. So we've got those three attacking midfielder options, and with Bowen out, we really don't have a right mid. So whether Grzycki plays on the left, and then we have, for instance, Henriksen on the right, and then either Irvine or Torrell in the center, it's going to be a very stacked team in terms of attacking midfielders. Dan, how do you see the lineup going? Do you see two up top, or do you see us sort of stacking the midfield?
Yeah. I think probably. I think it will probably just be Campbell up top. Partly because of what I said before, that he'll want to try and steady it up a bit, but also like in playing with just Campbell up top, you're sort of continuing on with what we've been doing a little bit, and hopefully that the players will be able to work with that a little bit easier than going from playing as a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, and then all of a sudden we're going to just go an orthodox 4-4-2 or something. I think, yeah, I think we kind of really have enough options there to play the two up top at the moment. Really, anyway, we don't really have enough quality backups to if something goes wrong, then you don't really have the manpower to then adjust and change to that anyway.
And then I guess the area of the pitch that we haven't touched on yet, and probably the most interesting in terms of the ramifications from Slutsky going, is our defence. Obviously, Tomori, Aina, and Hector all on loan from Chelsea, potentially only brought in because of Slutsky's connections with Abramovich. Mitch, I guess in January we'll probably be looking to make some additions to our defence anyway. Do you see Adkins as potentially shifting that defence for this game against Brentford, or going with the defence that I guess Slutsky sort of stuck with in the past, potentially having, Aina at right back, Hector and Dawson at centre back, and then Clark at left back, or do you think he'll sort of try and shift that around a little bit?
Well, I'm not sure he has many options to shift it around. I think Matt Clark has been okay, like considering our defense has been terrible. I don't think he's been all that bad comparatively, I guess. I don't think Tomori's been crash hot, so I'm not sure. Well, obviously I'm not Atkins, so I'm not sure how he'll play that. But I guess Hector comes back into it now, so I guess it will be him and Dawson in the middle. I can't really see many options to change it up apart from if he takes Tomori up from right back. But yeah, so probably majority the same.
Yeah, and I guess on that, Dan, I guess Mazouk is really the only option we would have to sort of change things up in centre back. I actually think he might have started the last game with Dawson, with Hector out of the side. Do you see Hector coming back in, as sort of as I guess Mitch has said there, or do you reckon Mazook should continue?
Oh, that's a good question. Look, I don't know. I haven't really seen enough of Mazook to have to get a real opinion of him, which is very frustrating because he did pretty well in the preseason, didn't he?
Yeah.
From what I remember. Yeah. And Hector has been so hot and cold. It's been so ridiculously frustrating. One game he is winning, like coming out and making interceptions and distributing the ball like a champion, and like he's pretty much tripping over his own feet the next game. So, yeah, it's been frustrating. I don't know. I think Adkins will hopefully. He's been to a few games. He will have seen what most of the players are capable of, and within the next couple of sessions, he'll hopefully see, and he'll make his own mind up. But I think probably Hector will come back in. But it could go either way, and I would probably be just content either way, as long as there's enough defenders on the pitch.
Yeah, we want enough defenders on the pitch to stop those late goals. Mitch, a score prediction from you?
I'm gonna say 1-1.
And Dan?
Unfortunately, I'm agreeing with Mitch and just going the same. I think just a 1-1.
I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that Adkins can have a bit of magic dust and get us a gritty 1-0 victory in his first game in charge, and hopefully get us off on the right foot. I worry for another game where we concede a late, you know, goal for them to win the game, or else a goal to give us to lose us the win and give them a draw. I worry if that happens again because of the fact that it would then sort of start to indicate that it's maybe not an issue with Slutsky, but instead an issue with the mentality of the squad. So yeah, I hope we can get a win, or at the very least a draw. And as long as we don't concede a goal in the last 15 minutes, that's probably the main thing for me, and would make me pretty happy. But fingers crossed for the weekend. And until then, thanks for joining me, guys.
No worries.
And thank you everyone for listening in. We'll be back same time next week on the Thursday, but special and important news. We've got an interview with Jackson Irvine himself on next Wednesday. So tune in for that. It'll be a great listen, I'm sure. We'll be talking all things Hull City, all things Australian national team, and as well as his career so far in all aspects. So it'll be a great listen, I'm sure. So until then, come on City! You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.